Alright, in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about whether you should get a M235i in 2024. Now, it is December, so we're almost in 2025. So I'm going to give you guys a few pointers of what to look out for and is it still worth it. So let's get straight into the video. So the first thing we'll talk about is insurance. Now, this mainly, is a thing for the UK because insuring these type of cars in the UK is a nightmare. So first off, before you even consider one, is run a quote for one, because if you can't go near it with insurance, then there's no point you getting one at all. That applies for the 135s, the 240s and the M140s, because everybody seems to want them, especially the 140s, and the insurance on them is just absolutely ridiculous. So let's say everything's all good and you can insure one of these. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it really changes regarding manual ones or automatic ones. The manual for me was a bit cheaper, but then you obviously have to pay more for the car to get a manual one, because finding a manual 240 or any M-like car is a bit harder to do than finding an automatic one. They're not as common and they're a little bit rarer, but we'll talk about that further in the video. So I'm going to put on screen now a few pictures of listings that I found on Auto Trader for automatic 235s and then manual 235s, so you guys can see the price difference. So I'll put them on screen. So there you go, you guys can see the kind of price difference. Looking at it from recording now, I haven't looked yet, I'll put them in when I edit it, but the manuals do seem to be a bit more expensive, but I might be wrong saying that now when I put the pictures on the screen. However, it purely depends on what you want to get. The automatic in cities and towns is way nicer to drive. I test drove a 240 before buying this, and driving it in town with traffic lights and stuff was way nicer than the manual. But where I live, which is a bit more, as you can see, out and about, the manual is a way more engaging feel, and I do think you can have more fun with a manual. So that's just something to weigh up of what you guys prefer. That is up to your guys' choice, so I'll leave that, guys, to you. Alright, this is just me butting in the middle as I'm recording the end of this video. If you're enjoying it so far, please consider subscribing to the channel to support me, and enjoy the rest of the video. So far, let's say you can insure one. You've now chosen whether you want to get a manual or an automatic one, depending on what your budget is. We'll talk about the N55 for a minute. Now, everyone's going to say the B58 is better, and in some ways, it definitely is. It can produce more power, and it is more reliable. However, in my opinion, the N55 sounds better. The only thing you have to do with these is just keep on top of maintenance. If you can try and get a car that hasn't been absolutely abused, one that hasn't been categorized, for example, all these type of things, I truly think that the car is going to be a better experience for you. Now, this car only has 2 previous owners. You can get some which have like 8 plus owners, and you just know that car has been handed down and it's just been used. So try to get one that has been really looked after, has loads of service history, all like major things done. If you can get all of that, it's worth paying the extra premium, because the engine is just going to be that much more reliable compared to one that hasn't had all this stuff done. Common things you want to look out for that have been done are auxiliary belts, gasket changes, rocker cover gasket changes, sump like gasket changes, all type of like places where oil is going to leak. The charge pipe is a really common thing you want to see if that's been done. All sorts of common engine things which you kind of expect. I wouldn't worry too much about timing chains, because they're not so much of an issue on these N55s unless you're looking at one with really high mileage. And if your budget allows, I'd try to get one that isn't really over the 80,000 mile mark, because when you get over to that type of mileage, the problems just start to come out of the woodwork a bit more. So if you can get one that is a lot lower, then it'll be in your favor a lot. I got this car on 60,000 miles, so that was kind of what my budget could allow me to get, and it's been super reliable since day one. And I actually bought it with the charge pipe done, as well as a load of other things done, like the rocker cover had been replaced, as well as all the gaskets, as well as a load of other things. Now we'll talk about the driving experience. I haven't had any issues driving this car. In fact, I've driven my mate's 140, and regarding handling wise and it slipping out of control and it being a bit twitchy on the back, I would definitely say the chassis on these F22s are completely different to the hatchbacks. For some reason, when I drove my mate's 140, it just seemed like it wanted to kick the back end out way more than I was expecting, compared to this, which you have to kind of work for it to, kick out, unless you've got really bad tyres on the back, for example. Now, the horsepower, this baseline M235i comes with 326 from the factory. You can get some where it's a little bit more. However, this one came with 326. Now, in 2024, that's going to be considered kind of low horsepower for one of these cars. When it came out in 2014, it was relatively high, but this is a 10-year-old car now. So it's going to be slightly, you know, back in the olden days of horsepower. However, I still think that is absolutely ample to have fun with. And regarding UK roads, where the speed limit is 60 mile an hour on a road like this, you really don't need more horsepower than that. Now, obviously, this car is tuned, so it's up to about 420. But realistically, you can't really use it. I mean, the roads around here, especially if you're in town or something or a city, you're not going to be able to use 420 horsepower anywhere, really, unless you're like breaking the speed limit severely. So, in my opinion, regarding 2024, I still think that's an ample amount of horsepower to be using, and it will be plenty for you to have enough fun with. This lad over here just stopped to ask if I was okay. Love him. I was literally just said I'm just recording a video, but he stopped to see if I was alright. He thought I was broken down. But yeah, regarding what I was talking about, regarding horsepower, it is ample and it's plenty enough to have fun with, and you won't really need to push anymore. I mean, if you're going to go take this to a Nürburgring like I've done, then 326 is going to seem like you're in like a Kia Picanto. It's not going to seem like anything. So then mapping it would be an option. However, you're not going to really need to do that if you're on the UK roads. Now, we've talked about horsepower, we've talked about drivability, and we've talked about reliability. So now we're going to have a little look on the interior and see how modern it looks, for example, being like a 10-year-old car. So if we take a look inside, in my opinion, this is BMW's best interior that they've done regarding this kind of timeline. So inside, in my opinion, if you're going to go for, you know, the insides, if you can pay for it, I see so many really well-spec'd 235s and 140s with the crappy nav. If you can afford to get the Pro Nav, I'd recommend it. You'll know it's a Pro Nav because this down here will be the large version compared to the small one with a tiny screen. I think the tiny screen just looks awful. So if you can fork out the money for a Pro Nav, I'd definitely recommend it. Now, the other things are, try and get a car as spec highly as possible. Now, I wanted to spec this car like from stock, but I couldn't because obviously I didn't buy it brand new from BMW, for example. Maybe I should move out of the way because I had another person ask if I was all right, but I literally just recorded the video. But yeah, if we take a look a little bit inside, you've got your auto lights. For example, on this little unit here, I've got the auto headlights, so it'll actually draw a box around the car and drop the main beam for that area. I've got cruise control, the limit section. I've also got the fact you can turn parking sensors off, so I got them on front and rear. No reverse camera, which is the other option I wanted, but I couldn't find one with it. I've got heated seats, air conditioning, so I waited and waited to find a car with the spec I wanted. I could have forked out and got one a little bit cheaper, but there were things that it didn't have. It didn't have the Pro Nav, or it didn't have Harman Kardon, which this car has, so I had to like choose of what I wanted, and then eventually this one came up and I went the same day and snatched it up because it was a pretty rare find. Now, the last thing we're going to kind of talk about is categoried cars. Now, if I wanted to get this 235i when I bought it, and a categoried version, you might find one with a really high spec, but it could be a catted car, and I would personally stay away from these because even the repair might be flawless. It might have gone to a really good shop and you might not be able to see any repairs that have been done. For example, any person who can look at cars well will be able to see that it's been repaired. They might not have sprayed the colour and faded it in matte like perfectly. There might be a few things that you'll just be able to pick up on. And the main thing regarding the category car is if it's structural, it will never drive the same. Now, I see on Facebook people selling like a really good spec 235i, for example, that's for sale, and it might be one that is like perfectly spec'd inside, and it might have loads of nice modifications and loads of history done, but then you see right at the bottom of the listing, which is the catch to why the price is so low, that it is a category car. And I know it is only personal preference because your budget might only allow you to get one, but for example, if this car had been hit, so let's say for example I crashed it right in this angle here, now they're going to replace the bumper, they're going to get a new light, you know, new shocks and everything like that. But let's say, like, you know, one of your pillars might have been bent or the A-frame might have got damaged. It's going to affect the whole handling of the car. I've been in a car that has been categoried, and from the outside, if you were to tell me it had been categoried, I would never have known unless, you know, the way it drove was it just wasn't the same compared to what they come out of the factory. And that is the only downside with these category cars, is they come at a really good price or significantly cheaper than a non-catted car. But you're just going to not have the same drive feel, and it's a real shame because you might find an absolute perfect one and then you find out it's a cat car. And if they don't tell you in the description as well That's why it's always good to do a HPI check to tell you if it's been damaged, because some people don't tell you, and that is one thing I would be real careful of, is make sure if you're dead serious about getting the car, get a HPI check or like some sort of check on the car to make sure it's got no recorded damage, because if something is too good to be true, then it often is. So final thoughts on this, as it is getting dark, so probably need to wrap it up because you guys can't see much really. I would recommend you guys get one of these. I would recommend this coupe over the hatchback. In my opinion, it looks slightly better. And I think if it's going to be your kind of first rear-wheel drive car, which I wouldn't recommend, I would start off in a 120D, for example. Plenty of power to learn the rear-wheel drive aspect of the cars. If you're going to start out in one of these, though, however, it's not a bad car to start out in. As long as you don't drive it like a mong, they're easy to crash, and I can understand why people do wrap them around trees, and that's just something you need to be careful of, especially if you live in the UK. I mean, look at the floor. It's like damp and drizzly, and it's like an ice rink out here, and that's the problem. If you have crappy tyres on, it's not going to help you. However, I do think these are good cars still. For it being, I think this one is only like 9 years old, something like that. So it's not an old car, but obviously they came out in 2014, so they are 10 years old, and next year they're going to be 11. So that's just something to consider. I'd also get the N55 with the electronic wastegate. That's just something to consider as well. I've got other videos on the channel for that. But regarding the interior, I don't think you can fault it. It still looks really modern, and there's not really a lot you can go wrong. I'm not a big fan of all the techie screens and everything like that, and massive screens, apart from the Pro Nav, but that's just my personal preference. But I'd definitely get one, guys. And I know you guys have seen loads of videos on the channel of this, and I absolutely love this thing. I prefer it to the Mini. I do miss the Mini, obviously, the JCW, but this thing is just another level. But I appreciate you guys watching it. If you have any comments, leave them down below of what your opinion is on these cars 10 years down the line. And subscribe to the channel to see more videos. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.